My name is Carson Matern and my project is on ocean acidification. Ocean acidification is lowering the pH level in the ocean as a result of the increase in pollutants and CO2 in the ocean. This has been a problem since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. So the ocean absorbs about 1/3 of the CO2 in the atmosphere, and when it absorbs the CO2, the increase in the acidity of the ocean occurs. And so when it comes into the water, it breaks apart and it binds with our hydrogen ions. And when this happens, it decreases the rate of the calcification of certain fish, especially ones that have exoskeletons and shells. This causes them to be smaller. Also, pollutants like oil causes the increase in acidification and increase of toxicity of certain metals, and eutrophication is the runoff that comes from pesticides, our lawns, fertilizers that comes into the ocean. It also changes the pH levels in the ocean and increases the amount of algae in the water, which has a change and a negative effect on the photosynthesis of the water. So when the pH level of the water decreases, we can no longer have these beautiful, gorgeous reefs because it causes a 30% increase in bleaching of the reefs. It causes about a 50% reduction in productivity, and it can lead to about a 50% drop in calcification of these animals that have shells. And so this is going to cause multiple problems because there will no longer be a habitat for smaller animals. The main causes of ocean acidification is the use of fossil fuels, because the combustion of fossil fuels produces more CO2 in the environment, which is more CO2 absorbed by the ocean. Fertilizers and pesticides also cause the problem because those are run off into the water when it rains, and that causes algae blooms, so we get red tide, and it causes there to be an increase of certain metals in the ocean, which causes a higher concentration of them compared to the water, which allows them to be more toxic. Global warming is also a problem because with the increase of CO2 and the increase in temperature, it's making it hard for our reefs to grow. Overfishing also puts unnatural stress onto the water and depletes the water of certain nutrients that is needed from these fish. And then we have industrial activity as a general whole, because of the pollutants that us humans produce and from the CO2 emissions and sewage that is dumped into the water. So this is going to affect our shellfish because they can no longer build the proper shells and they're going to be smaller. So fish that come and eat them won't get the proper nutrients because they don't have the proper nutrients, and this continues to go up the food chain. It's going to affect our coral and by causing it to bleach and die out, and when the coral dies, this won't have habitats for our smaller fish, and it's going to increase our erosion because there will be nothing holding those sand into place, and if there's no shells on these animals, we will no longer have sand on our pretty beaches. It's going to cause a change in the photosynthesis because if we have increases in algae blooms, we won't be able to have the fish get enough oxygen, and we won't be able to have the plants on the bottom be able to photosynthesize because the sunlight will be blocked for them. So this is where we have a problem with our gas exchange. And the toxicity of metal in the ocean is going to increase because when we have the fertilizers run off into the water, we have an increase in lead and mercury, and this comes in contact with the fish, and the fish will have higher levels of mercury and will also have problems with it because when there's higher level of concentrations of those certain elements compared to the amount of water, those become toxic. So we have a couple possible solutions, and there are possible solutions. One is we can have more restrictions on fertilizers and pesticides, but unfortunately the government was most likely not going to do this because major farms use this in order to make their crops bigger and to keep bugs off them. And we can also have a reduction of fossil fuels by the usage of more alternative energy, like solar powers and windmills and things, but unfortunately there's less money going to research for those things, and they can be costly, and the economy is supplied heavily by the use of fossil fuels. But as individuals and families, we can make a difference. We can stop supporting some farms by going to only organic products. We can reduce our usage of fossil fuels by carpooling, biking, or walking to certain places. We can add alternative energy resources to our homes, like adding solar panels to heat our water heaters. And we can also pollute yet less or stop using fertilizers and pesticides on our lawns and on our surroundings.